And so I said the same thing to everyone in Colombia, Dominican Republic, Mexico, all these different countries. I'm talking to them, big organizations. And I say the same thing to them very simply, that we're all warriors. And when you're not fighting, you're sharpening your tools.
What's up, peoples? It's your bartenders, Mr. Z.
And your boy, Omega.
This episode, our bar is graced with two legendary dancers and amazing kings, Fayzo and Zulu Gremlin of Medea Sirkas. We get a history lesson in dance greatness, education on dance fundamentals, and of course, our kings leave us with some life knowledge. As every episode, we want to thank all of you for listening. We truly appreciate you listening to our hearts and minds on varied and difficult topics.
Special thank you goes out to our Patreon subscribers for their support of the show. Every little bit helps us reach our goals to invite more high-profile guests and create bonus content.
And if you want to join in our conversation outside of this cast, feel free to hit us up on Twitter or Instagram at HaveADrinkCast, and make sure to use that hashtag HADcast.
Remember, this is always a conversation. If you don't agree, you want to voice your opinions, or even suggest a topic for an episode, feel free to join our Discord as well. The link will be in the description.
And please, if you like what we're doing here, share us with your friends, your family, your neighbors. Find new ways to immortalize our words for the children of the future. Your referrals mean a lot to us, as that's how we gain more listeners. So,
thank you again.
And get prepared to sit,
think,
and have a drink.
Welcome to Have a Drink Podcast. Enjoy the episode.
We said peace. What's up, peoples, and welcome back to another episode of the Have a Drink Podcast, where we invite you to sit, think, and have a drink. We're your bartenders, Mr. Z.
And your boy, Omega.
Hey.
And we have some very, very, very special guests. Safe to say, move the needle within the culture of hip-hop in the dance world. We have our man, Fayzo of Medea Sirkas, and we also have our man Zulu Gremlin of Medea Sirkas and Rocksteady. So let's give it up for our two legendary guests. Bow, 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 bow. Gentlemen, it is an honor and a pleasure to have you guys with us this evening. How are you guys doing?
Good. Chilling.
What's up, everybody? How's everybody doing out there?
Oh man, we blessed. Too blessed to be stressed. So I'm happy to have you guys here. Glad you guys get to finally meet my partner Z. So it's great to make these great connections right now. So we're gonna kick this off with an easy question. How did you get started in dance?
So and I'll try to make it as brief as I can. I'm 50 years old right now. I'm a son of a musician. My father's a drummer, guitar player, and a clarinet player, amongst other instruments. So I grew up around the United States, traveling, living in hotel rooms, and I was supposed to be a drummer, but I ended up becoming a dancer, dancing to his rhythms. And I found the robotic styles back in the late 70s, traveling to the Bay Area, seeing everybody getting down at the wharf and hearing about groups like Close and Demons and things like that. And it kind of inspired me, and seeing some groups on TV like The Messengers on TV shows. So those are all early inspirations. And then I discovered hip hop culture when it was finally arrived, and I started my duality within breaking, and that was 82. And so in 83, I started my first crew, Radioactive. We won national titles all the way up until 1985. And at that time, I moved back to Los Angeles, and I continued as a rap artist, getting signed to Virgin Records and so forth. And so that was kind of how I got started in it. It was through breaking, through the industry offering competitions in breaking, that really pushed me into being a part of the industry, so to speak. Or when you say, how do you get started? Well, it gets started by listening to music, but how do I get started in the industry was kind of all these competitions. They were organized, and it made us want to keep practicing and training and working on routines. And that's kind of like the early start into the many different elements of hip hop culture.
Wow. Love that.
Bubbly.
Love that. Bubbling. All right, Fayzo, your turn.
Well, for me, it's crazy, man, because I started very young. I started dancing very young. My first experience, let me just put it to you like this. I used to watch a lot of sci-fi movies. I love sci-fi movies. I love all that stuff, you know, Attack of the Killer Robots, Lost in Space, all that stuff. So, you know, as a kid, I used to watch those movies, Seven Voyages of Sinbad and all of those type of movies. And, you know, Seven Voyages of Sinbad, they would be doing the claymation, looking, you know, crazy, boom. You know, I'd be watching like cartoons and Bug Bunny would, you know, his hair would go over here, bow, and his body was still over there, boom. He's, you know, so I would look at all of that stuff, man, and then the robots in the movies and the sci-fi movies and stuff, and I used to imitate what they were doing. It was just it was cold to me. I used to imitate what they was doing, and so what I did is I started putting music to it and started just doing the robot at that time to the music, just from movies and cartoons and stuff like that, and that was just me on my own, but what Pops used to do is, you know, he used to see me in my room just doing that, you know, mimicking what I saw on TV and on the movies and stuff. And he would, when they had company, he would have me come downstairs and show the company what I was doing, right? And so I remember the first song he played that I danced to was "Thank You for Letting Me Be Myself," right? By Sly and the Family Stone. And so that was my first experience, like dancing in front of, I guess, an audience, so to speak, was in my living room, right? But my first experience on stage was in 1972 at my church. And it was a group in the church called Black Velvet, and they was cold. They was a cold group. And so I used to look up to them, and I used to look up to the leader of the group. His name was Charles Marshall. He took me under his wing and he showed me how to hit. Bow, boom, boom, bow. He showed me how to hit hard. And so I used to look up to him, and I used to want to be in their group and so on and so forth. But I was too young. They wouldn't let me in the group. So the church would have talent shows every Saturday and Wednesdays. And so this particular night, or this particular talent show, they had my age group put together a skit, a dance skit, and go on stage that Wednesday to perform it. Well, I'm walking on stage first, and I get in the middle of the stage, and nobody else came on stage. They got stage fright. So the music started, and it so happened to be "Thank You for Letting Me Be Myself" by Sly and the Family Stone, but they was playing it live. And I got off, I did my thing. And when I finished and I looked up, I had a standing ovation. And then that's all she wrote from there. From there, you know, I just started dancing and, you know, in my hood and stuff like that and getting on in the hood. And then, you know, in like 70, now I had my own groups, you know, little groups, you know, throughout the years or whatnot. But in 1978, I got in a group called Demons of the Mind. And once I got in the group Demons of the Mind, then, you know, we started practicing and, you know, doing all kind of shows and stuff like that. But let me just tell you this. We wasn't called Demons of the Mind at the time. We didn't have a name at that time. So we was just practicing and stuff like that and getting it, you know, the routine together. You know how we do it, Gooch. Like right now we practice and stuff like that. And when a show come about, then, you know, we'll, you know, perform or whatnot. So we were still practicing and getting the routines ready, but we didn't have a name. So it was this particular day, we went up to a guy named Mark Elliott's house. Right? Now, Mark Elliott was in a #1 group called Close Encounters of the Funkiest Kind, right? So he was like he was the leader of the group to be reckoned with. So we was at his house and we asked him for a name. We was like, "Mark, man, we need a name for the group." He said, "Come back in a few days, I'll have a name for you." So we went back up there a few days later and he had a name for us. And the name was Demons of the Mind. I said, "So where you come up with the name?" I don't know if you guys remember this, but it was an old show called Creature Features, right? And Creature Features used to be advertised in a book, which was called The TV Guide. So he said he opened up the TV Guide and he just was looking through and he put his hands on this particular movie, and the movie was called Demons of the Mind. And that's how we got the name. And then the rest was history after that. And that was from 78 to 80. That was from 78 to 85. We broke up. And then I put the group back together in, I think, 89. Me and Dana put Demons back together in 89. And in 91, we started Media Circus.
That's amazing. You know, it was a really crazy thing that I noticed between the both of you was the inspiration of your fathers that got you to start what you were doing.
Oh, I thought you were going to say because we're both old.
Nah, never that, never
playing.
that. I respect the OGs.
I'm just playing. Yeah, I mean, you know,
no, like that really stuck out to me.
Yeah, well, think about it too. Like, there's a lot of imagine in hip hop culture, and especially like we're talking about things that happened from the 60s and 70s. A lot of my partners didn't actually have a mom and a dad. Some of them just had a mom, or some just had a dad, and some of them didn't actually know their fathers. So I think some of us were really fortunate to even know our fathers, much less for them to make a good impact in our life. And so that's something great. And same thing with our mothers. Like, some of my partners, they didn't know their fathers, and their mothers stepped up to be that inspiration, artistically, if you're in sports or whatever it is. And so like that parent thing is like, it's such an important part of a building block, you know, for kids, like what you really learn. So like for us, I mean, I think that that's a great thing about me listening to Fayzo's story also, is that you kind of see that there's this passing on of a generation. Like, you pass things on. Like, I have my father's records right there. He passed those records on. I'm collecting those records. They'll be passed on to the next generation, passing on gems, telling us what the difference is. Like, you know, these just collectible things, they might be only important to some of us, but maybe not to every person out there, you know, like all these records. Yeah, media's changed over the years, but these records are even more valuable nowadays. And those are all like things you get passed on from your parents or your father or something like that. It's pretty dope.
Yeah. And see, a lot of people don't know my dad, he played drums for, a lot of the old black exploitation movies. A lot of those soundtracks, my father played drums on those soundtracks. Yeah, so he was a drummer, dope. Then he became a minister. So, that's why I get the talent, I guess.
Yeah, and here's crazy. So this is probably so interesting that we're on this topic, and then it comes to that. So that's really interesting news and more information to know about Fayzo, and to know that he was doing stuff like that, and that connects to those black exploitation movies. They were making connections again. My father was doing something similar. He was playing on tour as the opening act for Casey and the Sunshine Band when I was a little kid. And then from there was in the Battle of the Bands in Los Angeles, which is really old before that. And that's the connection to Don Campbell and the Lockers, because my father played at the Teenage Fair at Palladium, all these things. So these really cool things that our fathers did actually kind of set us up to be part of hip hop culture in a major way. If you think of it, my father played with Redbone for many years, the Native American band, and with War and Tierra and El Chicano, all these cool groups. And so when I hear Fayzo talking about that, we're making a lot of connections, saying that that music and all those things that our parents and family did in terms of being involved in music culture really rubs off and actually spawns off the generation of the dance culture in a massive way, more than people think. You know, it's not just we're funky, we chose to do a cool move, they know us. Nah, it's like lineage, actually, you know?
That's so sick. And the crazy thing is you guys now have kids, and your kids are involved in their own way. Would you guys like to expound on that just a little bit?
Yeah, well, my daughters, my two youngest daughters, man, it's like they've been around me and Media Circus, of course, all their lives. I was looking at going through some videotapes for Grim. I was actually going through some videotapes for Grim, and I was looking at one of our rehearsals at my house in my living room. My daughter, my oldest, she's 17 right now, right? And she had to be like 6. I mean, she was young. So I'm looking at the tape and I'm like, wait a minute, hold up. I had to rewind the tape It was her little face in there that she was in our rehearsal and she got in front of the camera and started trying to mimic what we were doing. And then I had to tell her to, we was practicing. So she was in the background watching us rehearse and doing her own thing at the same time. Now, mind you, my youngest, she's 13, she'll be 14 this year, but she started dancing before my oldest daughter. She was the one doing Michael Jackson and trying to do the stuff that we do. So what we were doing. So just to reiterate what Gooch was saying is that, our children is fortunate because they are able to see what we do, which influences them in their lives today. Now, my 17-year-old, which will be 18, she's a full-fledged dancer now. My youngest, she just into the arts. She's into like gaming and stuff like that. She's into drawing. She's into all of the social media stuff. So it's like, but they was born into it, to all of this social media stuff, but they're into the arts. And I think, I feel that Pops, that Daddy had a lot to do with that. You know what I'm saying? Because they've been around me the whole time. So, I'm just happy to have had a great influence on them, So yeah.
There's actually so I did an event called Break Mania, and it was in Santa Rosa, California, I believe, or somewhere out there, somewhere halfway between the Bay and Sacramento, somewhere, Santa Rosa, something like that. And Fayzo's children, I can't say, maybe around 8 years ago. So they were probably pretty young, somewhere around this timing, 8 to 10 years ago. So somewhere around this timing, but it's the unique situation is that I was producing an event, and I had Fayz come out to teach a class and judge and hang out with me. And you brought the whole family, and I brought my whole family. And there wasn't that many people at the event. So I was like, yo, Fayz, listen, man, everybody needs to be in this dance class. Nah, we're not having it. Tell them all. And so I have these really cool pictures of all of them. And it's your children and my children and a couple of our children all strutting with me in class. And you can see it down the line. And you see B-boys that don't strut in the class because they're like, I'm down too. Because even Ken Swift was with us and different people, like it was a bug out. So there's certain unique times like that when we're like with all of our children. And at that day, we're looking at them like, wow, that's all of them together, standing right next to each other. You see the different heights and stuff in similar ages. Yeah, and Malay actually dances in the group, like did a show with us.
Yeah.
Which is super dope. Like, so after all those years, now actually she strutting in the group, which is really dope. And so, and with my children, they've been, if you look at some of the history of what I do, like one of my brands is called The Family Business, and I record records with my children, and we all dance, rap, do graffiti and all these things. So we do Rock the School Bells every year, and that's in the Bay Area at Skyline College. And many times I had Fayzo come to teach with me, and then Media Sirkas come and perform. And so my family always performs with me every year. And this is going on 12 years now of the same thing. So Isabel was probably 3 when she did that. Oh no, 11 years. So Isabel was, before she was doing it, she wasn't even in the first show. She was like not even born in the first ones. And then when she finally could walk, like 3 years old, we trusted her on stage. And there's a video of her being 3 years old, breaking on stage, and it's pretty cute. But everybody gets down, and it's cool. Sophia's recorded about 20 records with me. So when you look on my platform, King ZG, on all platforms, you'll see her name is Young Fia or Fia, and you'll see her on there, and she's singing or rapping on almost all my records. Her and my wife are part of my songwriting team. So yeah, like keeping family together and passing to the next generation, it's what we do. Fayz, you were here for B-Boy Summit with the whole family, and all of them got to hang out again a little bit and build a little bit. So I feel like a lot is in the future for all of our children.
So, we got to hear a little bit about your starts, how you got here, a little expansion on, your family integration into individual businesses. I'm kind of curious, I know you guys, you're part of this dance company, y'all killing it, OGs. Right before the pandemic to the pandemic, like what was that transition like for y'all, especially within your different areas of entertainment? Like I know that a lot of in person, you know, rehearsals and things like that had to be put on halt until further notice. But you know, and you know, performances and whatnot. But just like, what was that transition like for you both?
So for me, the transition was really, I live in two major sectors. I'm an educator in LAUSD and around the world with teaching dance and hip hop history. And the second one is I'm a judge and a um, producer of events in different parts of the world. So immediately affected all my travels outside the world, which I usually visit 36 countries, up to 36 countries per year. Most of the time it's around 18. That affected it drastically immediately. So that had to become, and that was actually heading towards world championships, which became a mess because we already did qualified some countries. In the school sector, everything went directly to Zoom and everything shrunk to half scale because of the scare. I work in public schools and charter schools and then in the dance school industry. So the dance school industry tried to keep going, but they didn't really survive too well. The public schools went directly to Zoom and that just became kind of a learning process. And the charter schools shrunk to half scale, but it actually progressed really well because we were able to fly and they have a little different understanding about the importance of sharing your video screen and audio and being responsible enough to learn at home. That was for me.
Yeah, for me, me and Graham, we had we was working on like before all this happened, we was working on like a world tour and stuff like that, and that came to an abrupt halt. You know, we had shows booked that came to a abrupt halt. But I'm just the type of person, I don't like to let things hold me back. So, you know, I just kept rehearsing. We still rehearse, we made sure that, initially we made sure we had our masks on and stuff like that, but everybody is, none of us have COVID or nothing like that. So, we're all safe, in that aspect. So we still rehearse, even though we don't have shows and things coming up like that. We still do rehearse. We also had our podcast that we were going to do before the pandemic, actually in the studio with the backdrop, the whole nine, right? And we were getting ready to do that in 2020. It was supposed to be out in 2019, but we had some delays. You know how that goes. We had some delays. And so it was supposed to be done in 2020, and then the pandemic happened. So now we're trying to restructure it and do it on Zoom. You know what I'm saying? We were trying not to, or I was trying not to do the Zoom thing. I was trying to wait till this blow over, but it doesn't seem like it's going to blow over anytime soon. So we got to keep it moving. So, that's pretty much what it was for me,
No, I feel that, especially because of where we're at now.
Well, there was a couple of things we did manage to do in terms of maneuvering within the law and within the safest practice. And so immediately when everything got canceled, there were certain things that we couldn't cancel. So the things that we couldn't cancel are the things that are in the nonprofit sector. And the nonprofit sector, there was already grants raised, monies handled, so many proposals accepted. And so you can't just stop that stuff, and they can't stop it, and they can't actually stop it after they've already given us money to work with. What are they going to say? Don't do nothing. So we've had to redirect our energies towards where we can live within those sectors. And so I worked with the city of Los Angeles, with No Easy Props here with the city of Los Angeles to find ways to provide safe forms of education and entertainment together, and to actually exercise our rights as an American. So it's within that parameter of those three that we're able to do something. For example, they can't stop you from having a rally in front of a building. So we can rally, and we did. So we rallied and we ciphered and we danced and we said we're celebrating life and anger and everything in our dance. And we have a reason to, and it's real and it's not made up, but it's true ways of using English for ourselves to benefit ourselves in a way that there's not much benefit in what's going on. And so these are things that we were able to do. So I stepped in, and instead of saying, no, we're not going to do B-Boy Summit this year, which is a live event, public event, free for the public, with concerts and battles, events and art and demonstrations and panels, education and classes. We didn't sacrifice anything. I just stepped up and said, let me produce it as, let's not bring the world to us. Let's go to the world of hip hop in California through the grants that we have, parameters of California. So we did small excursions. I did the rally. We did a rally in LA, like Grand Park. We did an excursion to San Diego to tell the origins of the B-Boy Summit. Did an excursion to San Francisco to celebrate the Bay Area Legends Media Circus, one of the longest running groups to still be performing in it, and tell the story of the Bay Area. Always been a part of B-Boy Summit. So we had, Spy and Crayon and Agana, males and females representing, telling that story. And remember, Crayon is a first responder in San Francisco as a fireman. And Spy is an educator and told us what that wall means in the Mission District, which is worth, it's priceless. When you see that, you'll be like, whoa, because it's enlightening. It talks about building bridges and walls and what those things mean in both good and bad. So these are great things that happen. And we got to interview Media Circus, meet the newest member, my man your co-host right there, and meet them. The world finally meet him during all this negative things happening, all these things. We are still able to introduce new members, go into rehearsals, social distance, to record my section of it because I couldn't be there as a mascot from LA, and then they perform and I edit them together to provide the content so that Media Circus could be a performance on the virtual presentation of the summit. And so these all can happen. Like, nothing can stop us if you think about it. It's like just redirecting our energy to what is possible. And so that's why you look at it now, it's like the spawning of every TV show known to mankind will be popping up because you're stuck at home, so you can't go nowhere. So how can you do much? So this is kind of like the results of, in a lot of ways, like, what can we do? Name more ways. We did a lot of social distance outdoor instructional videos to implement in schools for asynchronous learning. And then we jumped on Zoom for synchronous learning. So you know what I mean? Like, you can always go into production and there's never enough content for what the kids out there, what they need and what they're looking for, Toast to that.
Hey, cheers to that. I mean, like, you hit the nail on the head with that. I mean, with what the kids need, like that's important, because there's a lot of stuff out there. There's a lot of that content out there that's mind numbing. Of course, you need to have a little bit of escape from reality, but at the same time, where's that excess or extra education coming from? Being able to tap into your deeper emotions, be able to actually feel emotions, handle hard emotions, get education on something outside of your textbook, which, hopefully will get revamped at some point.
For real. I mean, even in hip hop culture, we were always taught to or not taught, but reminded that whatever source you heard, you better find another source. Like, what? You heard that from your cousin? Really, dude? Oh, you heard it from dude on the next block? Or you heard it from the dude from the crew? You always know that you need to cross-reference everything in hip hop. Like, we've had a million conspiracy ideas, and that words like, Illuminati is 30 years old already. So imagine the minds of hip hoppers on the internet now. You know what I'm saying? It's everywhere. So the idea though is content really is most of it is just a con. It's not really content. It's just a con. So for me, I think of content as having some subject matter, some hip hop relevance, maybe some actual history, something that people can talk about. And it could even be controversial, like people talking about breaking being in the Olympics. There's a lot of controversy when you introduce a culture to becoming into the sport aspects or the sport sector, right? So there's a lot of controversy always. It's just about what kind of content we're feeding people. And people are really bored to death out there, really, and they're looking at any content, and that's the sad part. So we do need to make a little bit more exciting content that's good. You know what I mean? That's another thing. You know, like a lot of times you have to give a little bit of fun stuff and a little bit of what you need. Like, you know, even when you eat, it's like mix the veggies with something good that for the kids, like here, look, and eat your veggies too. It's that balance, you know, what you need and what you want. And in hip hop, it never works. That's why the wrong media is always out there. Because if it was what you need, it would be good content with a good message. Will that say sell records? No, you'll get dropped. So what you want is just like the artists that sell the most. And so we get back to that feast. It's that feast and famine mentality in hip hop, which is the real war in hip hop. Always been. It's like who chooses what art is and how much it's worth.
Bars. Dropping bars. And this is why I love sitting down and talking with my G's, man. Who was some of your favorite dancers that you looked up to when you first started? So who was the ones that you were like, man, I want to be like that when I grow up or when I do it? Like you mentioned one before, Phase, but I want to reach out to Graham about that too. For me, it's crazy to say it, but it's like when I was growing up, the movie that was out when I was a little kid was Breaking. So the ones that I was looking up to was Michael Chambers and how did I say? I gave his government. Looking up Boogaloo Shrimp and Shabba-Doo, you know. And then also I grew up watching Soul Train. So I was looking up to the Lockers, you know, or if I go the choreography route, like I'm a huge fan of Usher. So I was looking at Usher's dancers, and Michael Jackson's dancers, not realizing Housing Authority crew is those dancers that dance for them. So it's like all these people that I looked up to, I eventually either got to meet, got to know, got to dance with. So I was just kind of looking out for you guys in the same sense. Cause I mean, I grew up watching you guys as well. You know, seeing you guys performing all over from television to music videos to stage shows. And then all of a sudden here I am in line with you. So who are those ones that inspired you, that you looked up to and possibly even eventually ended up working with?
For me, like I told you, one was initially Charles Marshall, that was in the group Black Velvet. I also looked up to, you know, a guy named Ben James. Ben James was he was the leader of a group called Live Incorporated. And Live Incorporated was one of the #1 groups in San Francisco at the time, right? And then later on was Mark Elliott and Close Encounters. So, you know, to really, and of course, you know, James Brown, if you want to go into that, like James Brown and Michael Jackson and stuff like that. But, you know, we talking about, you know, I'm talking about like the local people was, you know, Charles Marshall, Ben James, and Live Incorporated, Mark Elliott and Close Encounters. Pretty much that's what it was for me.
Yeah. For me, I had different types of inspirations. And like in my early days, I can just remember a lot of, my father exposed me to a lot very early. And so I knew the importance of the triple threat, golden era, Brat Pack mentality. So I was a fan of all the Brat Packs, you know, mainly, I mean, of that era. I would say Fred Astaire was like a really big person that I looked up to in terms of just, I was very exposed to how much work he did and how big it was being a little kid, seeing that. I also was exposed to, and this is in my living room more of my, because remember, there's like these two different mentalities I live in. I live in the professional world and then my home world. My professional world, my father was exposing me to the Nicholas brothers and the Berry brothers and Fred Astaire and like all these different type of great things through these, and actually like rare performances of them. Like, look at this, watch this. And so that's that part. But on a local level and a more intense personal level, I was living, and a lot of people use this analogy, but my living room style of learning with my family, with my friends, with people I knew, I learned more by watching Soul Train, Solid Gold, American Bandstand, and specifically watching certain things about them. And of course, the entire Jacksons, because there was no Michael Jackson yet. It was all the Jacksons, the early New Edition, of course, Four Tops, Temptations, all of the boy I call them boy bands. They weren't boy bands. They're all the, line dancing, singing groups. So I was exposed to all those kind of things, my father being a musician. So I was seeing it at a professional level. And in my living room, I was practicing, like, learning choreography by watching it in the living room, wanting to do every single video I saw. And so that was the duality. And as I started to become more involved in dance, a little bit more involved, I started studying more things. And that's when I started to study a little bit more. I accidentally ran into the Shields and Yarnell and a lot of different robotic strutters and boogaloos on the wharf, which was a really big in terms of me seeing that and was like, wow, this is crazy. And Chinese drill team and the circus. I went to a lot of circus stuff. My father exposed me to that. German circus, Chinese circus, American circus. There's a lot of crazy things: elbow spins, head spins, handstands, weird contortionism, like doing things that come from different cultures. So I was exposed to a lot of cool things, and it was all those things. And I was very competitive as an athlete. So by that time I was already competitive in dance, I was joining things like gymnastics and being able to excel because of breaking and things like that. So lots of different inspirations in terms of, like Fayzo said, cartoons is one form of media, but cartoons, television shows, movies, live shows, all those different TV variety shows. Like even Dick Van Dyke was sick, funky as heck, because he used to lock. Watching rerun, or Fred Berry, rest in peace, on the TV show, locking it up a little bit after Soul Train and all that. Like, see, all these things had their important places. Seeing the robotics movies, that's having people acting like robots, and all these things were all important. Just like Chinese movies had some relevance, like learning how to do the coffee grinder on the floor and things like that. Shaolin monks learning all their amazing abilities. So I watched the Olympics every year and watched gymnastics and all these other things always. So all those things had, I'm sure, an effect. Cheers to everybody that got busy for years, putting in the blood, sweat, and years.
Hey.
And just to piggyback off of what Grim was saying as well, I had forgot about that. Like Shields and Yarnell, I used to watch their TV show, and Shields, man, he was a cold robot, man. He was a cold roboter. So I mean, that was an inspiration as well a little later on. And as far as dance was concerned, but here's the thing too, like Graham said, yeah, it was the Jacksons, but we all know that Michael was the one who stood out, right? So I would just like to see Mike do the spins and just him to come out and do his own thing, right? And I, in school, I used to, be the Michael Jackson guy. Nobody do Michael Jackson better than me, right? But I
think we all were.
You know what I'm saying? But I used to hit too, so I would add some of that with the hits and stuff like that. So in elementary school, man, it was real cool that I was able to do all of that. But yeah, so Shields and Yarnell was one of my inspirations as well a little later on in the game.
That's awesome. That's awesome. It's so funny you said we used to be the Michael Jackson guy, because that's how Z got discovered to dance with us. Was he was the Michael Jackson guy? But I'll let him tell his story.
Well, I mean, yeah, like I was working at this restaurant in Sacramento. I did everything there. They had a restaurant that was outside on the river. They had live bands that would play every weekend. And every time one of the bands would play Michael Jackson, the owners of the restaurant would look at me. Well, the very first time it was hilarious. They looked at me and they're like, "Are you gonna go up there and dance?" I was like, "I'm working. Are you sure? You don't gotta tell me twice. Here, take this." I got right up there and just started doing my thing, and that just became a regular habit. And the lead singer of one of the bands that was there, I came to set up, do my thing. Like, I had a lot of the patrons there, they had extra setup stage, stuff for me so that I could dance smooth, on the surface. So it wasn't me catching and falling or what have you. And so I did that. And then I got picked up for the production company, and that's where I met Omega, dancing for bar mitzvahs and fundraisers and all sorts of things. And every single time, you know, I would come out in the beginning of my career with this company, they would have me do specifically Michael Jackson. He'd be like, all right, Michael's on, and here comes Z. And I'm like, all right. And then, but after a while, it's kind of like, all right, man, because I can do more than just Michael, right? Like,
So,
so,
so are you guys still doing bar mitzvahs?
No.
So did you ever at least go from dancer to the host?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I've been an MC.
Yeah, we were both MCs. We both were dancers.
You have to hurry up and get to host. MC. Yeah. Hurry up and get to that one.
Oh yeah, big time. No, I was saying I did 10 years in the mitzvah game. I was like, I'm good. I made a lot of good money. I traveled all over the country. I'm like, I'm good. I'm done. I can't do this no more. I retired.
I did about half that, and I was like, I'm good. I don't want to be here for that long. But
I had a really good buzz in New York City for a minute, though. A real good buzz. Every kid in New York was like, send Zulu Gremlin. I had a cool formula.
I love it. Yeah.
I believe that. That was me here.
Pretty much every show, they'd be like, oh, you know, we want Omega. We got to get Omega. I mean, I knew it was going to be a good show when Omega showed up. So, like,
well, you know, they want to learn to wrestle with the girls. So,
oh, there you go.
At that stage, those boys, everything in there, like, come on, come over here. They're like, did she look at me? I'm like, she's not looking at you, man. Come on, focus.
Just on the Michael Jackson thing, man. I remember one time we was in rehearsal and I was messing around doing Michael Jackson. I was doing a kick, boom, I did the spin, and you know, I came up on the toes and I did the backslide and bam. And A1, he was like, he's like, man, you should do that in the show in your solo. I was like, nah, I'm not gonna do that. And he's like, man, you should, man. It look dope, man. I was like, nah. Look, Juneteenth, 1985. Right? Juneteenth, 1985. We did the routine. Wow, we was doing our thing. And I went out on my solo. And you know how sometimes when you go on your solo, man, you don't even know what you doing. You just go. And so I just went, I think I was hitting the Fillmore or something, you know, boom, boom. And then something just in that moment when I went down and came back up and something told me to spin around. So I spun around, boom, went up on my toes, wow, did the kick, boom, did that. And then I backslide to the left. And then I started hitting the Fillmore, kick my leg up again, start vibrating, and the crowd went crazy. But that was the first and last time I ever did Michael Jackson on stage, but it just felt right. And in the back of my mind, you know, I was hearing A1 say, hey man, you should go ahead and do that, man. You should do it, because I'd be messing around in rehearsal. So yeah, I just want to share that with you guys, man.
You know, it's one cool story. I think we can leak it now, FaZe, because we've been on a gag order for years, but we did work on a documentary after Mike passed away. We just haven't seen it surface or any of those things, and so we can't share the footage or share that stuff. But we did work on that documentary. It was yourself, me. I brought you. I think I brought you, Little Coco, and Shrimp.
Yep.
Yeah, and so all four of us strutted on that one section. You came in from the Bay to LA. Yeah. So that's really dope. So rest in peace, Michael Jackson. He did have a big effect on everybody. And, you know, like, not just thinking about it as seeing him dance and his energy and all that, but his records, hearing them in different ways over those years, and how many different dance styles attached to some of his music. In the last 20 years, more lockers, people that lock, not lockers, that's a group, but people that lock have attached themselves to a lot of Michael Jackson music because of the energy of that disco break feeling. And that's really dope. So there's certain things that are really dope about, you know, he studied hip hop dance. He studied from the Lockers. He was a student of the Lockers. He practiced the robot from Robot Dane. He studied locking from the Lockers, and all of the Jacksons dressed like the Lockers and did a big segment for television. And then he became a student of Jeffrey Daniels from Shalimar, and he started learning the backslide. And Then he went from there to Boogaloo Shrimp and started learning how to backslide and pop his legs, and that little bopping section, like how he steps out and bops. People don't know about that history about. And then he went to Poppin' Taco, and Poppin' Taco taught him all the other glides and a little bit more of the King Cobra glides with it.
Yeah.
So lots of history with all of our friends and people, that people that have been around, and a lot of our friends are in the Michael Jackson Experience in Vegas. A lot of people that win my competitions and pro-am events, and people that younger cats that look up to us, are in that show in Vegas, the experiences. Yeah. So it's pretty dope.
Now, did you guys see his face while he were talking about all of this? Like his screen wasn't frozen. That was him literally like being in utter awe at all of the information you just gave, because there's a lot of people don't know that Michael Jackson learned from street art. A lot of people think that he just came up with it, or maybe it was some choreographer, not realizing there was so many influences in his life. And even for me, it was like when I met Denny, or D Double, Don's son, like, and hanging out and getting to know the family, they were telling me stories. Like even Dennis's little sister, who was a really good friend of mine, she was like, "Oh," he was like, "Yeah, my little sister, she was sitting on their mom's lap while they were working in rehearsal, getting ready for a show." And I'm like, "So you guys were that tight?" And he's like, "Yes." And I'm like, that says so much. That speaks a lot to how they respected the street art, and they went directly to the source to get that stuff. So it was like amazing, and to see how you guys were intertwined in that development is so beautiful.
I'm gonna say this, man. I got a couple of stories, man. But one of the things about Michael Jackson, man, what inspired me about Michael Jackson, it wasn't necessarily his dance, so to speak. I liked the way he danced, but his dance didn't necessarily inspire me. It was just how fluent he was with how he did what he did. When Mike would be singing, he would just be spinning. He just be in the groove of it, and you could tell that he was the driving force of the Jacksons because of his energy. When he would dance and then when he would sing, you could tell his whole gut, his whole soul was in every aspect of it, and that's what really inspired me about as far as Michael Jackson was concerned, is just his love for what he was doing. That was one of the things. The other thing was his creativity. When I seen him in concerts and stuff like that, or you see him on stage and you go to one of their shows, man, he flying over the audience in some crazy space, something, one of those machines and stuff. And I remember we went to our manager at the time, this was like 1984, we went to see them in LA. And they came out of this like octopus spaceship where these arms came out like this, right? And then they came up like this, and they were just standing there for hella long. And all you heard was, now mind you, our manager got us, we was in the third row. Sidney Poitier was sitting right in front of us. Rick James and then was sitting right behind us. You had Janet Jackson and her family over here. It was crazy. We was like right there. And so when Mike and them came up and all these bright lights came on, man, I was looking like, that's what I'm talking about, right? We couldn't even hear each other talking to each other. But it was just the way they came out of that spaceship, and the way Mike, they were so creative with what they were doing. That in itself, the creativity of Michael Jackson inspired me to do a lot of what I do within Media Circus. It's just, yeah, it's just a beautiful thing just to see how he was able to do what he did, So yeah.
True.
I could go on and on, y'all. I'm trying to keep it short, man, but yeah.
Hey, no. I could resonate 100% with all of that. Like, I mean, never really getting to meet him in person. That was always kind of the goal as like, a young dancer, seeing him do the backslide for the first time. And my nephew, who's the same age as me at the time, was like, oh, I could teach you. Visualize yourself on stage dancing with Michael Jackson and you hit the backslide perfectly. And I was like, oh, goals done. And you know, like, and just working hard towards that, you know, but also understanding all that went into everything he did, you know, like the ample amount of creativity, like you said, you know, it's not just, you know, the dancing is dope, the dancing is amazing and phenomenal, but once he enters that space of flow, it's a whole new level. And
Yeah.
like as dancers, I think we could all agree, correct me if I'm wrong, but we could feel it when he tapped into it. Like you
Yeah.
could see it, you could feel it. You're like, I gotta move, I gotta get out there, something's gotta give. Like, you know.
And when I say he didn't inspire me, like as far as dance, I mean, I loved his dancing, but I mean, I didn't look up to Mike as a dancer, like,
Right.
oh, let me dance like Mike, but
Right.
I loved the way he danced, you know, and just, he was so charismatic with it. And it was so effortless,
Yes.
you know, when he danced. I mean, you know, I saw him do a little Fred Astaire piece and I was like, Mike smooth in a mug. Mike is smooth. He was just smooth, like, it was just natural, man. And I just love watching him perform, you know? Yeah. But I got this crazy story, man. Dana gonna kill me for this though, right? This was the show that I was just telling you about in LA, right? So, like I said, our manager, he got us third row tickets, right? So the concert was over, right? Now this during the time when Janet Jackson, I guess, was married to one of the DeBarge brothers.
My brother-in-law,
right?
yeah. Actually, funny
James,
enough, James DeBarge is my brother-in-law. Marty,
oh,
James,
real?
yeah, all them.
Okay. Yeah. So,
Yeah. Oh, I told you this hella long ago.
Connections, making the connection.
Right? So look,
Yeah.
so it was James DeBarge, it was Janet, it was her mom, it was Randy, and some other people that was with them. Now, mind you, the concert's over. We're about to walk backstage. I'm right behind Janet Jackson, like she's right here. I'm right here. Dana's right here. Security is right here. I'm past security, walking in with the Jackson family, right? And I'm seeing, there go Marlon right there. There go Jackie right there. Mike right there. I'm almost in. And Dane, I look back, Dane just standing there, froze. And I wasn't gonna leave my dog, right? I'm like, dang, and he just froze up. And so I had to like go back with Dane, man. And I was pissed off, but it was like, man, what was wrong? It's like, oh, I don't know, man. I just froze up. But yeah, man, we was backstage. We was just, all we had to do was take 3 more steps. We was in the dressing room with the Jackson family, the whole nine. And Dana tell you that I never let him live that down.
No, you should not have let him live that down. Matter of fact, we're going to talk about that again at rehearsal on Wednesday.
I shouldn't have told you.
No, I'm just
I should have told you, because now you're going to clown. Yeah, but those are fun times.
Hey, I need you guys to do one thing, because our audience doesn't know what this is. And I would love for it to come from the mouths of those that have been around. What is strutting?
So let me just break it down to you like this. First and foremost, the word strutting have been around forever, right? So when you look up, you know, what strutting is basically strutting your stuff, you know, showing what you could do basically with confidence. That's what the term strutting is. And that word has been around forever. But what strutting actually is, it's a form of stepping. It's a form of stepping, like, you know, like the Four Tops, the Temptations, you know, it's a form of stepping. But it's, you know, with the combination of dominoes, catch-ons, together moves, and the precision of ROTC. So those are the elements of strutting in group form. Now there's another form of strutting, which is called the Fillmore. It's a form of strutting, but it's the solo form of strutting. And that's, you know, when you moving your arms as if you're directing traffic, you know, you're breaking down, you're doing.
Can you stand up and show
like
us?
Yes, sir. And for our listeners at home, you'll just have to tune into the video podcast.
So now, normally I would do the Fillmore fast, but I'm gonna do it a little slower for you, just so you get what it is. So the Fillmore is a combination of shuffling your feet, boom, boom, moving from side to side, and then moving your hands as if you're directing traffic, boom, 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 boom. But you got to do the breakdown. Bow, bow, boom, boom, boom. So doing it fast, it will look something like this.
Hey.
Oh,
Hey.
that's the Fillmore. And that's it. I mean, there's different ways I can do it. You know what I'm saying? But that's just a little something I just showed y'all. But it's different ways. It's a feel too. So a person that knows how to do the Fillmore, we all got our different ways of doing it. But what you will see in every person that does the Fillmore, you're gonna always see shuffling of the feet. Boom, bam, moving from side to side. Boom, hitting them arm, hitting those angles. Boom, 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 pow, boom, breakdown, hop, boom, spins, boom, pow. So yeah, that's a little something.
Now, we just had Grandmaster Fayzo of Media Circus show us something. I gotta ask, man, can we get the Grim? Can we get Zulu Gremlin, the man? We want to see, how do you strut, Zulu Gremlin?
So, I mean, I strut in many different ways because I'm a person that is considered a b-boy as by name, a dancer by trade, but when it comes to strutting, I strut in many different styles in many different ways, and I mix different elements in my struts. So if you're talking about strutting with the classic, let's just say fundamentals of strutting, my fundamentals of strutting are, I learned a little bit from Faze. I learned a little bit from other members from back in the days. So for me, strutting has a certain feeling that I have that I think is very important. And it's not that always in every strutter. So if I were to say strutting, and I'm actually sitting at a table right next to a wall, so I'm not going to have much room to move, but so you can understand the concepts of the way I strut, and I actually can push this table. The way I strut is really a combination of using my points and my windmills while I'm traveling, because I like to travel with my stuff. So I like to hit my points and my windmills. So I like to windmill my arm a lot, especially when I'm sliding or moving to the side. And I like to change my tempos a lot. So when I watch Fayzo, that's a great example of my bass tempo. I love to stay at that bass tempo. And my Fillmore drops are usually in 4 sections. So I usually do like a lean back, a drop, a hop, and another lean back before I start to strut again. So wherever I'm strutting, if it's straight arms, if it's double windmilling, however I want it, I kind of stay within the structure of kind of the way I think of other styles, where I feel like I'm not doing the style unless I do each of those elements. If that would make sense.
And yeah, what Gren was saying, those are a few other elements of strutting too. You have the single windmill, you have the double windmill, you have the, when you hit your arms behind your back and stuff like that. So it's different elements of it. I just showed you like just a portion of it.
Yeah, so I don't have much space right here to show you, but things that I really like and things that I think I've learned and adapted is I really like things that are not so traditional, like popping up and dropping down with it, like little things that are inside of it, like crossing my hands that are not so traditional. And those are little things that I got from watching Fayzo, like when he's clowning around and he's doing extra things. So some of those things I think are important because it could get like you're almost doing the same movements over and over. And another thing is that extended arm and that little sliver to the side, those little. So when you use this mentality of this, which is that little movement of side to side, when you put that body feeling into it, it adds a cool little flavor. The same thing, like when I hit, sometimes I give it like some little hydraulics. So like I'll go whap, whoop, whap, whoop, 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 bam, and hit like a little bounce with it, depending on the record. But little things like that kind of make me feel. And it's weird because we use this sound, whoop, whap, whoop, whap. And I think that that's a very big part of the actual essence of strutting in a way, because it replaces 5, 6, 7, 8. It replaces boom, bap, for New York style or whatever it is, it's the whoomp whap of strutting. And it's that whoomp and that whap and that whap, you know, kind of things to it that make me feel like it's in the spirit or the essence. So when I think of it, it's part of the approach, so to speak. So it's not really the movement so much, it's really the feeling of that shuffle and that whoomp whap.
And just to piggyback off what Grim said, and strutting is a feel to it. So you know, a person that is a true strutter, you're going to get the actual feel of the person strutting. You know what I'm saying? So for example, like what Grim was saying is like sometime I'll do the Fillmore, right? And then I'll this is that feel that Graham is talking about. Boom, wow, boom, wow, boom, wow, boom, wow, hitting the windmills. I don't have a lot of room here, but you know, it's just that groove to it. Wow, wow, boom, boom, wow, wow, boom, boom. You know, so it is a feel, and it's different ways you can do it. But the foundation, as long as you have that foundation, which is that shuffling your feet, moving from side to side, boom, hitting those angles, then you can mix it up and do other things. So it's all about building.
That is so dope. So now man, it was such a blessing to be able to have you guys do this live on the show with us. Let's actually switch gears a little bit one more time. Now, I do remember earlier you guys were speaking about having the Media Circus podcast. So with that have been said, is this some stuff that we're gonna be able to learn or see or get to know at a deeper level on the podcast? And would you guys like to talk more about that and kind of expound about what you guys are planning on doing with the podcast?
Well, the podcast is, you know, it's called Media Circus Legacy. And the podcast is really basically a platform for dancers to come, you know, speak about their history, and you know, for the audience to learn more about our history and so on and so forth. And yeah, we'll bring guests on at some point, but it's really just that platform for us to let people know the Bay Area history, our history, and beyond. And you can add to that, Grim.
I think that the part of the focus of this podcast will be very informative in terms of some history and some information for people, especially now that the dance is around the whole world and people have so much questions pertaining to one of the most underground street dance styles of ever, which is when we talk about strutting. And so I think the podcast will probably be a place for people to maybe seek for some of that information based on that. But in addition to that, I think that the podcast is going to be a way of us connecting people around the world, connecting people in different dance styles, people in hip hop culture and in urban scene and abroad. And even further, like the education scene and things like that, because things will start to melt on the show organically more with us just sharing important things that we care about. And thank goodness that what we care about and what we are sharing could be considered common knowledge, history, local history, American history X, dance history, and so forth. It's like so many things that it fits into so many different molds. So I think that it's something for everyone to learn, especially if you want to know what's going on in America. Then if you want to know what's going on, then over the last 30, 40 years, then you're going to be having to look at America through the scope of hip hop culture and how we fit into it and all those things. It's a living organism, hip hop culture. So the podcast will be able to mirror the concept of being able to know what's going on right now and in the future and how things develop. I mean, we can take people into some of our private things that people don't know about. And this podcast can actually be very great for helping inspire some of the next generation to not only try strutting, but to learn the fundamentals, know some history, and even get mentored or coached and helped, because all of us are good people. We all reached out and helped many people in many different communities.
Man, Wow. Wow. And now, Z, you now see why I wanted to be a part of something way more greater than myself, because I
100%.
get to hang out and learn from and be surrounded by great men like these gentlemen right here in front of us.
Thanks.
Absolutely. Absolutely. No, it's a blessing to have you both on. Like, to be able to hear your experiences, to be able to pick your brains a bit, because I mean, I've been sitting in the house for 10 plus months and like almost a year now, and like just that little bit of watching watching you go through the Fillmore and different types of strutting and all that. I'm like, I'm definitely gonna go back and like rehearse and practice a little bit more, because I'm like, ooh, I want to add that to what I've been doing,
Mhm.
you know.
Yeah.
But
You know what's really interesting though is that this is an important, I think, a pivotal time in everybody having self-discipline and being able to do things at home on your own. You need first you need like blood circulation, water circulation, your limbs. If you don't use them, you lose them. I mean, everything. Imagine what's happening to us sitting in front of computers for too long. So doing some basic things like stretching or moving, walking, jogging, dancing. Imagine what top rocking is. It's like jogging and walking and rhythm and music history all in one. And we're in a generation now that we multitask so much. So you might not have time to go to the gym and to learn about hip hop and to go to dance class and like this, but you might be able to do all in one through hip hop dance, and which is really dope. And so for me, I've been pushing for some things because I work in such a young sector. Like my youngest class is pre-K that I just had earlier today is pre-kinder. And that's my youngest class. And my oldest classes are doctors at Kaiser.
hey,
So could you imagine there's a big range, like very, very like elderly, older than me, and the youngest ones that are just walking, like, which is my left hand? Uh, wait, you know? So this is important. And I think, and like, there's certain things that I think that we all need to do. Reinventing your own space every day. Keep putting your computer in a different place. Keep changing the level of it. Keep changing the lighting. It's white, turn it to yellow, turn it to blue, whatever. Just keep changing things so that you keep reinventing that same space. So 10 months doesn't feel like 10 months, you know? And I've probably changed 3 times today. So I love fashion. So I've changed my clothes 3 times today because I'm not going to wear. It doesn't mean I can't change my gear up. You know what I mean? Like, and feel fresh. After my class, I was like, I got to wear this sweatsuit for this class for the kids. I'm even going to throw on some shades, maybe. I don't even know. There ain't no sun in my house, but that don't matter. You see what I mean? So, I mean, really, it's about trying to be playful, energetic, put in some time, build discipline, like wake up, get your butt up, wake up and do something early, like get it on. Like just because we're home doesn't mean that we have to stop. If anything, it's giving me more reason to go faster. So 50 years old, I feel strong. Like, what? Are you kidding me? Like, and Media Circus, Fayzo is like a dude that'll make you do the routine 3,000 times. So, I'm built for that. So,
I
you know
mean,
what I mean?
Facts. Big
Stretch your way to health.
no, I could 100% resonate with that. Like, I mean, especially because of the pandemic, a lot of stuff has kind of, had to kind of reshape and reprioritize things and figure out where I want to go. I mean, you can ask Omega. I picked it up like, and anything I could, especially if I'm not going to be dancing and performing and on tour and doing all the things that we were doing beforehand. I definitely want to still have an outlet for creativity, have an outlet for for my kids to be able to be involved in some form or another. We started this podcast. Like I was just go, 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 go. I taught myself everything I need to know about what it takes to put together a podcast, and asked the homies, and I was like, hey, y'all want to be a part of it? I mean, Omega, I ask everything. I'm like, hey, you want to join this with me? He's like, yeah, sure, I'm in. And we had like a crew of us at the beginning, of us being able to meet every week. And I mean, right there, I was just like, okay, I know we're gonna need some thumbnails. We're gonna need to make some album art. I ended up drawing this drink, splashing out, so that we'd have a background, making labels, making sure we had a Patreon, making sure we had all these social media accounts, like figuring out what a mid-roll was, what a pre-roll was, like all these things, and still trying to figure out how we're gonna do live shows. I think I just cracked the code on our live shows, which is going to be super fun to be able to like play around with some more. But like, yeah, no,
And
I
so,
totally.
and that's perfect you say that, because there's two things that I've been saying to, I have dancers, artists, and athletes around the world that are contacting me about all the events that we do. And they're like, the events are canceled. What do they do? How do they keep kids interacting and engaged? How do they keep them going to practice and training when there's nothing to train for? There's no competition to go to. How do you do all these things? And so I said the same thing to everyone in Colombia, Dominican Republic, Mexico, all these different countries. I'm talking to them, big organizations. And I say the same thing to them very simply, that we're all warriors. And when you're not fighting, you're sharpening your tools. So if you see a warrior, when he's not at war, he's sitting there sharpening his blade. And that's what we're doing. We're sharpening our skills. We're learning more. We're getting craftier. We're learning how to combat what time really means to us, and building a new fabric of what things are. Like, what is my home, and what is my business, and what is my ethic? And so these are things that are happening. And I always let them know that how hip hop is. Hip hop was introduced to the world as a sharp sword. Hold my kids, scary, hold my purse, watch out, here comes that hip hop stuff. It was introduced as a sharp sword. But people like you and me, all of us here, turn that sharp sword into something so simple as just a letter opener. It's just a fancy letter opener to open up the letter for the next proposal, for the next project, or for the next production. And so you think of it as what it is you've been given time to get your sharpening on and to build your things. Completion. Like, there's so much to be done right now. Like, you know what I'm saying? And after this is said and done, maybe we'll have some full, thorough, competent proposals to chew on that you can say, yeah, they really put time and thought into this. It wasn't just a template. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, that's real talk. These days and times that we're in right now is, the time for you to, like Grim say, sharpen your sword. Take this time to grow. Take this time to take care of unfinished business, unfinished projects. Get your mind right, get your life right. Whatever you need to do to keep your life right and to keep you straight, now is the time to do it. We got all the time in the world. So I can't see someone coming out of this saying, man, I was chilling. You was chilling for a whole year. That really, this is the time to make it happen, man. But yeah, man. So yeah, these are those
It's
days
cool.
and times, man, where you have to make it happen. So yeah.
Well, it's cool to chop it up with you guys, man. And this is dope that you guys are doing this show. I'm glad you're making use of the time that you have and being productive with it. It all will end up being something at the end, and though things feel choppy right now for people and feel like we just creating it and inventing it, it's nothing new. And it'll all seamlessly be sewn together, like if it was all made to be like that when you look back at it. So right now it's just like dig in deep. And when you feel tired, maybe you're tired of one thing, jump to the next element. Because I've never felt tired ever. People have asked me, when do you sleep? And I'm like, I don't sleep, I just rest. And it's really important people understand the concept. It's like, you don't need to give up on anything. You just need to refresh yourself and keep it moving, nourish yourself. You know what I'm saying? So big ups to all of you that are tuning into this show. And thank you guys for checking us out. It's really dope to see my dude over here, both my dudes over here doing this show, and bringing on someone like me and Fayzo. Like, you would have to, so just so guys can get an idea, you would have to be like, go out into the wilderness with a shovel and dig a hole, and then you'd find real hip hop. And then when you find that, then you'd have to get another hole, a bigger shovel, and dig a bigger hole so you can find like real hip hop, like the dancers, because that's at the bottom. And then when you finally get there, you'll need a drill bit to dig into that last piece of tough earth to find like real hardcore struggling soldiers that have put in like blood, sweat, and years for decades when something doesn't really have a space for them yet in their life. Like, you know, breaking and dance of all the elements were used to catapult the culture and were thrown to the side really early. And dancers have never been treated properly in the industry, and never, and even in Hollywood now, they're at the lowest part of the totem pole. It's at the lowest level. And so this is something that we can all change by having proper respect for people and what they do, not celebrating mediocrity one thing at a time, but celebrating professionalism and celebrating mastery in all its capacity. And Media Circus is proven over decades. Like our last trophy we got was like the most unique dance group of all time. That means that we are not biting. That means we're not copying. That means that we're setting trends. And that's a big thing for dancers out there to understand, man. You really need to know. Don't offend the people, the very people you're trying to get respect from. And so big respects to all you guys that know about substance and essence and foundation and fundamentals. Because if you don't know where it's been, you never know you don't know where you can take it. Big ups, everybody.
Hey.
Appreciate it.
All right, y'all.
And on that note, we just want to tell you guys, thank you to all of our Patreons. Thank you to everybody that has been supporting the podcast. It has been a true honor and a pleasure to do this for the last 10 plus months. And I also just want to say thank you to our special guests. I mean, these gentlemen have a plethora of other things that they could be doing tonight and just in general, but they decided to take some time out of their evening and spend it with us. And I just want to say I am humbled and honored and deeply thankful that you guys were able to do this. So thank you so much.
Likewise.
Good, man. Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. And leave a question off to our Discord. I'm kind of curious, you know, what tools have you been sharpening during this time? Yeah. And if you want to continue in this conversation outside of here, make sure to hit us up on Twitter or Instagram at Have a Drink Cast, and make sure you use the hashtag HADcast. That way we can check out whatever you guys post.
And before we let you guys go, can you guys let the world know, how can they follow you guys on your social media? How do they contact you?
You can follow me on Instagram at _real_Fayzo, Fayzo. The group, you can find the group IG is Media Circus, and that's MEDEA SIRKAS. And for Fayzo is the same on Facebook, and it's Media Circus is the same on Facebook as well.
And for me,
Awesome.
you can find me on most platforms as Zulu Gremlin or Zulu Grems. And for all my music, you can find me on all platforms as King ZG. And my website is www.zulugremlin.com. And that'll be probably the best ways.
Perfect.
Awesome, man. Thank you, gentlemen, so much. You ready to close this out, sir?
All right. It's about that time. It's closing time. Gentlemen, I implore y'all to raise your glasses. Listeners at home, same with y'all. All right. Kings, queens, and royals in between. I want to thank y'all for joining us for another successful episode of the Have a Drink podcast. And we invite y'all back again to sit, think, and have a drink. That's been us. Peace.
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 Peace.